Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. I'm Mrs. Sherman. Welcome to Homemakers Radio. If you're new here, please click the link in the description box and go to the post on which I have embedded this broadcast so that you can leave a comment. I don't have comments on the channel. I'm trying to reduce the amount of work I have to do on the internet, and this is about all I can handle is this particular section. And so today, before you get going, I would like you to see my new teacup, which I got at Home Goods. The prices are going down. Remember, the last time I spoke to you, they were almost $10. They've gone back down to about $6, and there's nothing wrong with them. You can get these at the reject shops and the places like Home Goods, TJ Maxx, and Ross, Marshalls. Some of these places, there's nothing wrong with them. They just may be last year's supply from a store, and they buy them at a discount and sell them at a discount. And so I'm really proud of this one. I love the colors in it. Also, I wanted to bring up the fact that somebody years ago sent me this book. It's called Days to Remember, and it is illustrated by Donna Green. Just really pretty old-fashioned drawings in it, and I don't know who did it, but it must have been about 20 years ago. Maybe it was 10, I don't know. And I love the illustrations in it. And at the time when it was sent to me, I didn't have any descendants. And so I had put it in a shelf, and I knew, the birthdays of all of us, and I knew what our anniversary was. And so I'd put it away. And then these descendants started coming on me rather quickly. And so I missed a birthday, and somebody called and said, "You are their grandmother and you missed their birthday. You didn't know today was their birthday." And oh, I cried. And so I found this book, and I've got a bookmark in the current month, and the current month is the one that I will always look at to make sure, and I haven't missed any birthdays since. And there are now, I know you probably have a lot more, but I have 27 of us now. And so there are probably more coming, and I'm so happy to have this book. That always hang on to things you think you don't want to use now. You're trying to declutter and stuff. Hang on. This has just been a very valuable book. Days to Remember by Donna Green. I'll put the picture and maybe a link where you can find one and get yourself one. Or if you're real handy and crafty with the mini journals and the things that you make out of this fancy paper, you could probably make your own. Another thing I want to show you before you go and get dressed and get ready, and I think it's really important, especially if you're not feeling well and you're feeling a little bit maybe even discouraged. That's the point at which you begin to recover, which you begin to feel better, is when you start to take care of yourself and get dressed. And so the other thing I wanted to show you is because I had been reading this to you in the garden with Jane Austen, and I wanted to share with some of you homeschoolers that like to be careful with material that you don't quite agree with, and that you would like to, you're allowed to alter these books if they're yours. You can alter them, and if it's for your children. And there was a picture in this, that was a garden picture. It wasn't very pretty, and it had kind of scary looking I guess you'd say carved statues and things like that. So I cut a piece out of an old calendar and pasted it exactly over I measured it and everything, over the picture on that page. So because I thought, my children and grandchildren like to go through my books, and I just thought it would be nice if things were really nice, because everything else in it is absolutely beautiful, and there was just that one picture and that I didn't care for. There might be more. I'll have to keep looking. The pictures in this book, In the Garden with Jane Austen by Kim Wilson, they're absolutely beautiful, but there was that one objectionable picture that I didn't like, and I knew their parents probably wouldn't want it to be there. So you can alter anything you want. And so then, here's one more thing I want to show, or maybe there'll be more than that I want to show you. I mentioned this book here, the Christian Charm Course, and getting this one with this kind of cover. The new one is not. We didn't enjoy that as much. And showing you that in it was a page that had exercises. They're just sketched out, and it was called My Daily Half Dozen. And I started doing these exercises when I was about 16 years old because I found this book. And or maybe I was 17, I'm not sure. And I started, they were just very simple exercises, and there were 6 of them, and you could do them as many as you wanted. And there was kind of like a full, where it would, full body workout, some stretches and some, but not vigorous. And so what I have done, and I kept up with it, except every now and then I would say, I don't feel any different. I'm not losing any weight. I'm just going to forget it. And I'd leave this routine for a couple of years, leave it alone. But what happened was I started getting stiff. So I started getting not as flexible and having more pulled muscles and more pain and stuff. So I enlarged it and put it inside of a plastic sleeve like this, and hung it up in my exercise room, and started doing them again and feeling so much better. And so I think that the point is that it's not too good to expect to lose weight or to for things to change much, but when you don't do it, things really do change for the worse. So it's a maintenance type thing. And I figured out what this one stretch exercise used to puzzle me. What was that all about? You stand on your toes and you reach, and you're down and you're reaching. Well, then I looked it up, somehow just came across something that indicated what physical therapists today are talking about that exercise. Anytime you reach, it takes care of the flab in your stomach. It tightens it. It helps you to trim down in that area. So anytime you have a reaching exercise, it's a very valuable exercise. So I was happy to find that after all these years. It's just too bad, that saying, too late smart, too soon vital. And so I'm going to read a poem to you, and we'll talk a little bit about housekeeping and homemaking, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about dealing with people, because we all do. And let me turn off the noise on my phone first. I had something that I wanted to read to you, and totally have lost it, so I'm not sure what it was. And it was all the things you could do with citrus peels that are very helpful. Those are things that often you throw away that are free that you could use. And so this is from an old Ideals country magazine. We used to like to get these, and they have revived it every now and then and tried to do it again, but it was on very nice parchment paper. It was just very pleasant. It was a classic, and they would often print an old painting in here, although they wouldn't always give the credit for it. But I kind of recognize that from some of the things I have put on my web over the years. And it had a beautiful, beautiful poem here about the home. And it reminded me before the day when we were so busy, when life was so busy, where people were encouraged to, especially the homemaker, were encouraged to get the right furniture or to match everything up, which I found impossible. By the time we had bought a piece of furniture and saved up the money for the matching piece wasn't available anymore, and the old piece had worn out, so we could never get a couch and a coffee table and a chair and everything in a set. So I just gave up and started doing the cottage core thing. And that's what you see here. I've got a 100-year-old couch there that someone at church gave us years ago. Must be about 140 years old now. And then I have a few new pieces that I've mixed in with it, just for things we need, because when people come, they've got to have a place where they set their cup on, or just the convenience. And so I'm more worried about that. And I have just coordinated it by color, rather than trying to get everything to work, everything to match. So this was called A Quaint Old-Fashioned Home. And I wanted to read it because it reminded me, and by the way, if you've got something you need to go do, this is the time to do it, because I don't think I'm going to show you anything else. No, show and tell is over. So I'm going to read a quaint old-fashioned home to you. And those of you who are under some kind of distress, I've done several videos on distress in the home, family upsets and upheavals and things you didn't expect and things we can't read a book on how to fix. If you are under any kind of stress, it's very important to listen to this video and get some relief from it, at least for a little while. You know, we homemakers, we homeschoolers, we people who love our families, we don't want to let go of the concern and the stress because we're afraid that it will make us careless and not alert for these people's souls. And we want to make things right in our home and to rescue everyone. And so we don't let go of the stress because we think that we don't want to get apathetic about it all and just give up. You know, we want to be available and we want to be alert, and we want to be alert to prayer. We want to be alert to the needs of our loved ones. And so it's hard to relax, but it's not good for our bodies or our minds to have consistent stress because it can actually wear down on your physical health. So just relax every now and then, like for every 20 minutes of stress, take 2 minutes of relief from it. Just give 2 minutes. Just look at your little clock or watch and just give yourself 2 minutes without thinking about it and looking at something or listening to something or do something that's not related to that. That's very self-indulgent. Something to, redo the inside of you and give you more strength and just to encourage yourself. I think they call it self-care. Okay, this is called, this is about an old-fashioned home. And this book went from way back in the 1950s to just recently, and I think this one might have been, and it was published in Nashville, Tennessee. But I don't know what year this one was. Trying to figure that out. With all this tiny handwriting, I don't know where to go, but it looks like it would have been a more recent one. I like to see a modern home in keeping with our time, but none I find so charming as the quaint, old-fashioned kind. A home that has a lived-in look with porch that's big and wide, where hickory rockers like old friends are sitting side by side, where flowers bloom in time-worn crocks to make each day more fair, not plants you need to pamper, just the simple garden fare. A welcome mat placed at the door, one of a homespun style with words of friendly greeting sure to bring the heart a smile. Modern homes are nice to view with their up-to-date design. Still, it always warms my heart to see the quaint, old-fashioned kind. And what the poem reminded me of, I'll try to remember to print that on there for you on the post. What it reminded me of is a time when we looked so forward to having our own home that we were thinking about things like who was going to braid us a special rug and where we were going to get the curtains for the window. And the curtains were always very simple. They were just the rod pocket ones where you could just slide a little sleeve over the rod and hang them up. And then I just remember while reading that poem before I came here today that we got in a home that someone sold us 50 years ago that was from the 1970s, and it had the curtains on it with those hooks, and the hooks had a little sharp needle type thing that you put up into the pleat of the curtain and hung them up, and then there was a pulley on each side of these big heavy drapes. You'd have to pull them open on one side, and there was another string where you could pull them closed, but you could never have the variety of changing them around because they were so expensive and they were so difficult to take down and to manage or to wash. And then these little hooks were very dangerous. You could hurt yourself with them. They'd fall out and a child would pick them up. They were the worst idea, and I don't know who talked the drapers into doing that, but I am so much happier with a plain rod, and I can change my curtains out, and I can use cotton ones if I want, or I could put something else up there, lace, anything like the old-fashioned type. Those were easy. Do you remember how we used to take the flour sacks, which were made of cotton calico fabric, and we would make curtains out of them? And it's just like it took our creative choices away from us when they came up with these big curtains for these great big huge picture windows. And that was the big thing in those days, and that was in the 1970s. And so when I read that poem, I thought about these simple things. It made life cheerful, it made it interesting, and it made it doable. And that was one of the main drawbacks to these modern homes, is you couldn't do a lot of things in them. And there were people that couldn't afford those kind of curtains, but they still had the hardware up there, and they were almost impossible to get the hardware down and find something to install up there. And the hardware had so many pieces joined together that you couldn't have put a regular curtain over it anyway. It just wouldn't have worked. And I remember I was driving past a neighborhood, and people were putting blankets up there and different things because they couldn't afford the curtains. But this way, the old-fashioned way, was so much more affordable, and anybody could do it. Anybody could decorate their home. You wouldn't have to have a lot of money. So today I'd like to give you some points that I have worked out here. Now, this is all my opinion, so don't take it too seriously, and remember to find your own way. Check out everything that I say against what your family has a need for, and if there's anything that has to do with your spiritual life, you check that out in the Bible, and make up your own mind about a lot of things. This is just for your entertainment while you go. So, how to keep from growing weary in well-doing. Now, I don't exactly have that scripture handy right now, but it was, do not grow weary in well-doing, for in due time you shall reap if you do not faint. And I believe that means if you don't give up. So I thought to myself the other day, well, how do you not grow weary in well-doing? It says do not grow weary, but how do you not grow weary? As homemakers, the same things are repeated over and over. There's the dishes, there's the laundry, there's the floors, there's the teaching of the children, there's all the responsibilities of home. And one of the worst things I think that has been done to us as homemakers is getting us out of the home with constant errands and shopping, so that we really weren't, even though we were homemakers and we were at home and we were homeschoolers, we really weren't home that much. Not as much as I would have liked to. And the last 2 years when the country was, quote, shut down, was probably a great blessing to many people, because they finally figured out how they could order a lot of things and just stay home and still make life interesting for their families. So I worked up a little list here and thought I might experiment with it myself. That's what I like to do, is get a theory, get an idea, and then experiment to see if it works. And one of the big tenets of science is that if you can repeat the experiment and it has the same results over and over, then it's scientific. So I've been doing that with some of the tests I've been putting on things like fresh air and noise and all the things that affect us in the home and can make us discontent or unhappy. We'll check them out. Let's see what the source of it is, and let's test it out, because we know we want to be content and happy at home. So the first thing I would say, if you're growing weary and do you ever get just awful tired? The same thing going on in the kitchen all the time, and you wish you could just get out of there and do something else. I mean, sometimes I'd like to do something else besides always be preparing food, making the kitchen messy, and then cleaning it up again. And so sometimes I plan for something for afterwards. So, in the old days when I was growing up on the homestead, the women of that time would get the housework done as quickly as possible so they could go do something else. And of course, they like to go fishing, and they like to take the children berry picking, and they like to do all the other things. And when their husbands came home, they'd say, "What did you do today, dear?" And they had no trouble saying, well, I took the kids on a picnic today over by the, over here by the creek. And the husbands didn't mind that at all because they knew that their children were cared for by the mother, and she didn't mind saying that. And I noticed recently how many young women are afraid to say, after they've been asked, well, what did you do all day? And they say, well, we did this and then we did that. It's because it sounded so happy and leisurely that they thought maybe someone might think that they were lazy or that they weren't doing anything, quote, important. And but I remember hearing the women saying, "Oh, guess what we did today? We took the children here and we did this with them, and we built a little raft, and we did these things." And so I would say that saving that little goal after doing some of these grunge jobs would be a worthwhile activity. You think about doing those things after you get everything done. And like I said, they quickly got the housework. What did they call it? I forget what they call it, but they quickly did the housework. I was trying to think in one of Grandma's diaries. She said, we did up the housework. And then we went here and we went there. And they did a lot of things they wanted to do after that. And my mother she made a homemade rug, and she also liked other types of activities and art and crafts, and she loved the outdoors. So they didn't dwell too long on the work in the house, but they did do it. But they had goals in mind that made them look forward to it and kept them encouraged. So how to keep from growing weary in well-doing? Well, number one, I would say if you reached a point where you feel a little bit, where you're sighing all the time and you're tired of it, is to ask for God's help to renew your mind and to renew your enthusiasm and your love for your home and your family. And one of the things people don't realize about homemaking and homeschooling is we are working in the place that we also live in, that also provides our leisure, that sometimes we are forced to take holidays in, and we don't get away from it very much. And so one of the things I did when my children were growing up and when I was homeschooling is teach them how to relax at home, teach them how to vacation in the off moment. You could do a few things, but then relax and enjoy your life. Get a book to read and then just learn how to enjoy little things that would help them enjoy life, and learn to relax at home. The other thing would be to freshen up the home, freshen up yourself, freshen up your home in a way that brings you cheer. We often see on garden shows, all these beautiful flowers that people bring in. I don't really care to bring in fresh flowers because of the fact that it's more work for me to look after them, dump it all out, throw it all out. So I don't bring in the fresh flowers because I grow them outside, and that's good enough for me. But we see from the past that some of the things that women did at home were very, very simple. A little bouquet of flowers on the table, just little touches here and there made them happy. And I remember that they crocheted these little tiny doilies because they were places people put their coffee cup, or it would protect the furniture, or they had just little touches that cheered them up. They didn't have to have the whole house redone or the walls repainted or knew everything. They just did tiny things. So think of some small touches that would give you a lift, that would keep you from growing weary in well-doing. And now also keep creative goals in mind. I have a big long list of things that I've always wanted to do creatively. Keep those creative goals in mind. And also I was going to tell you about buying time. Now, as I've got more vital over the years, I've found that I can't sleep past 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes it's worse than that. And I quit fighting it. I decided, well, I'm just going to get up and do something. So I'd get up, get all this work done that I had on my list that I'd made the night before. And then by noon, I was sitting in a chair, resting, and I used to wonder why the parents would sit in a chair around noon or 2 o'clock or something, and they just kind of close their eyes and go to sleep. And I think, well, I'm not sleepy. Well, what happened was they were getting up really early in the morning to fix a fire, or just because they couldn't sleep, or because they had to get up, and they were getting everything done so that by noon or 2 o'clock it was leisure for them. They could rest. They had been up a long time, so they had bought themselves a lot of leisure time. So if you are having trouble with sleep, just don't fight it. Get up, get dressed. I know it feels odd, but everybody else is asleep. But what was happening was they were letting us sleep, so when we woke up, we couldn't figure out why they were so tired. They'd already been up, for 6 hours. And so don't fight it, and get dressed and start working. Or if you don't want to do it that way, that's fine. But catch up with some things and buy yourself a leisurely afternoon. So don't resist when you're waking up too early. It gives more leisure time. And the other thing is to work around unexpected obstacles. You'll just get started in something that you're going to enjoy doing. I know I was cleaning out a cabinet the other day, and I wanted to get some of the stuff in there that had been in there for years, and I wanted to just freshen it up, put some other things. Got all that stuff out on a table, moved the cabinet, started sweeping behind it, and somebody called and said they were dropping by. And I said, well, okay, everything's out, everything's a mess, but all I did was get the tea ready, and we just sat in another room. And that way she could see what I was up to and what I do. It's not really good to give people the idea that everything is set and that you don't do anything. It's good for them to see when you have a place torn apart. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the dwelling too, and how if you have in mind that the home is above, it is not above or below or anything concerning the social structure. It is on its own. It's even not even royalty. It's better than royalty, because you have a choice of what you can do, and you determine what it's going to be like. And this is why I say, to keep from growing weary in well-doing, you need to get the house the way you want it. My husband emphasized that to me from the first day, to get it the way you want it. Get the atmosphere the way you want it. And that way you're not going to be discontent or restless. You'll want to be in it. And of course, I tried to make that for my children too, so they'd like it. So they'd like to be sitting there, be there at home. The other thing is to do something to improve the home. If that stays the same all the time, that can be rather boring. But I remember we used to rearrange furniture when we were tired of it one way. And then do something to improve yourself, and something to help someone else in your home. And I know some women who just will choose one day per child that she'll do something special for that one person. And then have a reward. Think of a reward in the back of your mind for something, or for one of your own family. Have creative time where you can learn something. Do a bit of singing, a bit of walking, a bit of writing and reading, a bit of praying, a bit of relaxing, and a bit of exercising that's casual, not something that's grueling, and not something that's boring. Just do some of that each day. And we all want a script to follow, don't we? Everybody wants some kind of book that they can follow, where it tells you exactly what you need to be doing every hour. And I think it's because we've all been so regulated all of our lives through public institutions, public schools, workplaces, where it's so regulated. It's all set out for you. You don't have to think. So we get home, and now you're on your own. You better think about how you're going to regulate yourself, because that's how you get self-control. As you think about the things that need to be done, and you need to be self-employed and self-regulated to be successful in it. And we all want someone to. Do you ever wish life can get so bewildering at home sometimes? Do you ever wish somebody would call and tell you what to do? I really enjoyed reading Brian Kozlowski's book last time. The chapter on walking in the house, and he suggested we needed a new app on our phone where it would remind us every now and then. Let me encourage you to take it. It was from Miss Bingley, where she told Elizabeth, "Let me encourage you to take another turn around the room." It's so refreshing, and so I'm trying to find a descendant that will call me and tell me something like, "Let me encourage you to go and gulp some air, some free air, to remind me." And so that is another thing that you can do to keep from growing weary in well-doing, is to vary up, get a variety going, and change things around with your routine. You might want to go out first thing and get your air. You might want to read last, before you go to bed. You might want to sing and pray and walk at the same time. Just think of different ways. They say variety is the spice of life. However, we do have our comfort zones, and we want to keep those too. Now, there was something else I wanted to... I can't read my notes, that's the only thing. And it was about how people used to go outside because they were overheated in the home, which was natural because we did a lot of things over a hot stove. Yes, we did, literally, over a hot stove. And so they would take regular times outside in the fresh air. Just open the door and step outside. And this is really important if you're homeschooling, if not to do too much sitting down paperwork with your eyes, and get the children up to go outside, or just to get up and to walk around, and not limit them, not make them sit still all the time. And you don't need to be sitting still all the time either. It's probably not very good for you. So create, do other things after the must-dos, and that's one way to keep from growing weary in well-doing. You probably have a lot of ideas yourself, like a favorite book you want to read, or a friend you want to text. Those are just great things to look forward to. And now, the one you're all waiting for is Brian Kozlowski's The Jane Austen Diet. I wished he'd write one on Wives and Daughters, about Molly Gibson and Hyacinth and Cynthia and Mr. Gibson and Roger and all that. He could do a lot, because if you ever watch I've got the book, but if you ever watch the movie production that was like a series, you would see so many beautiful outdoor scenes in that. And sometimes when I have the descendants over, we'll watch that movie just as a tradition in our family, because this time we're going to look at all the colors in the costumes, and then we're going to look at the rooms, we're going to look at the furniture, and the next time we watch it, we're going to look at the amount of time they spend outdoors, all the outdoor scenes. Another time we're going to listen to the music. And sometimes in these movies, the producers do such a good job of having a different tune for every character. And we notice that too. And sometimes there'll be one character that is rather dour, and he'll have a gloomy tune connected to him, especially in some of the Charles Dickens ones. But we'll watch him for the hairstyles, or we'll watch him for the dinner scenes or the tea scenes or something like that, and enjoy every minute of it. And so I'm going to read the Jane Austen diet book, because he had something in here about noise. And I always used to wonder, did you ever wonder why you feel so rattled when you get home from shopping? I mean, it used to make us quite encouraged and enthusiastic when we got home from shopping. We enjoyed it. We're glad to be home, but it was so refreshing. But now we are besieged by noise. And noise is, you know what, it's part of battle. And even in the Old Testament, do you remember that one battle where the Israelite army was supposed to take pottery and hit the pottery with spoons and make it sound like there were a lot more people there to scare away the enemy? And noise is often associated with fear and with battle and with being upset. And not all noise, of course, but it seems like when we go out and we have to do our errands, you have to go shopping, even if you have to go and check on something at the waterworks or at the electric department or anything like that, they've got a pipe in this what they call music, which we call noisic, and they come home feeling rather rattled and upset and take you hours to get going, hours to get refocused, hours, and I do think that it's very bad for children and for babies to take them into these places that have that noise. And so I want to read to you in his chapter, the health and happiness, the mind-body connection, health and happiness, and he mentioned this. So let's start with the chapter on an interval of meditation. Silence, stillness, and quiet. Most of us don't fully experience it today until we're fast asleep. But Austen knew that being cognitively silent from time to time was essential to a healthy mind. The quietness of it does me good, she wrote her sister in 1813, describing her enjoyment of a few moments of snug solitude with the front drawing room all to myself. Do you ever get up in the night and there's no one in one of the family rooms or something? You get to have it all to yourself. Her novels are arranged accordingly. Nobody functions well without frequent doses of suitable quietness. Maybe I should title this episode "Suitable Quietness." You know how you go to Hobby Lobby, you see all these signs and they've got these neat sayings on them that came from the end of a poem or the beginning of a song that we're familiar with. And we should have some of these Jane Austen quotes like suitable quietness. In Emma, Jane Fairfax automatically correlates her decline in mental health to the absence of silence in her life. I have never known the blessing of one tranquil hour, Franny Price can relate. The incessant noise and clamor of her family's house in Portsmouth gives Fanny an aching head, both literal and mental. She longs above all for the peace and tranquility of Mansfield Park. In fact, one of the overarching themes in Mansfield Park is the pursuit of this quiet, restorative peace. Mansfield Park discovers in principle the path to the wholeness of the self, which is peace. Humans have long understood that being constantly surrounded by noise has a negative effect on our minds. Even the word noise, from the Latin nausea, can you believe this? Means a form of sickness. Quietness is a primal need. Our brains are built to require occasional periods of silence to reboot themselves, like computers, downloading, processing, and organizing data more efficiently during quiet moments, even growing more brain cells to smarten our response to the new information. It's no accident that people often get their best ideas in the quiet of a shower or in bed, and that's why Austen heroines like Anne in Persuasion eagerly seek out quiet times for when they have important feelings to investigate. Did you ever have a child that just wanted to go and be quiet somewhere and just be quiet and sit for a while? I had one that would say, I'm just going to go be quiet now for a while. And the others, of course, weren't interested in that, but I had one that just wanted to be quiet and go outside and listen and look around for a while. And then he would come back in and say, I'm okay now. Silence allows us to process our emotions and solve problems more successfully. It says here, Anne in Persuasion eagerly sought out quiet times for when she had important feelings to investigate. Yet despite living in the far quieter, and what do people do today? They get these feelings that they can't sort out and they start talking to someone else, or they just kind of want to talk it out. I'm not sure if this other way was not better. Yet, despite living in the far quieter world of Regency England, Austen knew that silence was a luxury you have to consciously remind yourself to enjoy. How many of you put aside in your little schedule quiet time? Now, I do see the advantage in writing a schedule by time, by hour, 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, do this, 10 o'clock to 11, because that helps you develop self-control and self-discipline, which the Bible speaks of as being so important. I do see the importance of doing that. I never could manage to keep up with the time, but I believe that putting those numbers there, 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, are important because you're giving yourself some time to do something and you're giving yourself some time limits. Yet, despite living in the far quieter world of Regency England, Austen knew that silence was a luxury you have to consciously remind yourself to enjoy. Let us have the luxury of silence, says Fanny. So take a short mental holiday on a regular basis, quietly sitting in unwearied contemplation for a few minutes without the sound of TV, phone, radio, or podcast. Says sitting in unwearied contemplation for a few minutes without the sounds, of modernism. And this regular mental holiday, yes, very important. Just 2 minutes of silence has been found to be more mentally recharging than listening to relaxing music. In Austen world, sometimes the best thing to do, hear, or say is absolutely nothing at all. Such is the healthy art of important nothings. And I think that if you are keeping one of these lists or a schedule, you might put in 2 minutes for silence and see what happens. See if it renews your mind. In Mansfield Park, Mrs. Norris has yet to discover this silence. Mrs. Norris was now trying to be in a bustle without having anything to bustle about, and laboring to be important when nothing was wanted but tranquility and silence. So, I'm hoping that you could put that in your little schedule of a few minutes of silence. Remember, was it in one of those Jeanette Oak books that they made into films, and it was the second one. Of Love Comes Softly, and it was the oldest daughter that was saying, if I just could have a few minutes of quiet. She was in a log cabin, but there was so much noise. Yeah, there was a lot of noise out on those homesteads. And before I close today, I'm going to read to you, for those of you who are in some kind of duress, distress, mental hardship, I'm going to say, just take 2 minutes. Just put the 2 minutes on. You're going to worry about your son or daughter or your aunt or uncle or your sister or brother that's kind of been a disturbance to the family. You worry about them. And what you could do is think about them, pray for them, have 2 minutes of silence away from thinking about. Don't think about them. 9:10 to 9:15, do not think about. Give yourself a break. Give yourself a vacation. Okay? Turn some things over to the Lord. See, what you can do is, if you are just in a terrible habit, and it's almost an addiction, where this adrenaline of worry is just feeding it constantly and you can't get away from it, you're going to have to take a 2-minute vacation away from the stress and let God take over during that time. So I'm going to read from you something that has given a lot of people some comfort during the worst times and the worst problems in their lives at home. And when someone has really jolted you or caused a disturbance, that some of it's pretty serious too. I know I'm hearing more and more people who've just enduring terrible things that are happening to their families. And while everyone's concerned about the news, concerned about what Congress is doing and everything, the world is marching off with their loved ones. And so this is what we need to think about. This is what we need to be concerned about. And It doesn't matter if the world straightens out or not. What if it all straightens out and everything is nice? Um, you still have to watch for the souls of these people. You still have to pray for them, and that's our biggest concern, isn't it? Um, but we have, and this from 2 Corinthians chapter 4, and it's verses 7 through 10. I've read this to you many times before. I wished you would write it down on a little plaque, on a little piece of brown paper, hang it on your fridge door or somewhere, and think about this, or put it in your apron pocket, go for your walk, and get it out and read it. But we have this treasure. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and read what was written before this to see what prompted this. What prompted this? This is what I was going to read just now. We have this treasure in jars of clay, that means common, to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. It's like prose. We are perplexed, but not driven to despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifest in our bodies. Well, what brought this on? Let me just read the previous verses, because this is interesting. Therefore, having this ministry by the mercy of God, we do not lose heart, but we have renounced disgraceful, underhanded ways. We refuse to practice cunning or to tamper with God's word, but by the open statement of the truth, we would commend ourselves to everyone's conscience in the sight of God. And even if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing. In their case, the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. For what we proclaim is not ourselves, but Jesus Christ as Lord, with ourselves as your servants, for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, "Let light shine out of darkness," has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. But we have this treasure in jars of clay, to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed, always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies. Have you ever gone through something that you thought, life just couldn't get worse, and you woke up the next day and you're amazed? You kind of don't feel as oppressed about it the next day, and so that's what it's saying. We are cast down but not destroyed. And I just love these comparisons, perplexed but not defeated. And so if you want to read that, and I will put that on the post as well, so you can go back to it. I had a few things, but I couldn't read my writing after, because I wrote it so quickly. So let me look this over and see if I can figure it out. So the other thing that I did write down was it'd be really smart to make appointments with yourself at home. You know how people can get a little bit down, a little bit depressed, if they don't have things, events to look forward to. And sometimes at home, especially these last couple of years, we've had trouble getting people to come, or they're not getting around as much, or they're keeping to themselves. To make appointments for yourself. So now you keep this schedule, and you write 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and you make appointments, and you go and make yourself do them. And if you'll do what you are telling yourself to do, that's the hardest thing, because you say, wait a minute, who wrote this? I wrote this. I don't have to do what I tell myself to do. But if you'll give yourself some appointments, like I'll give myself an appointment, I'm going to go watch on YouTube a watercolor instruction that's free, and I want to see how something is painted. Or I'm going to go and listen to a voice lesson or speech lesson. I want to keep up my my homeschool skills. I told one of my grandchildren recently, I am going to tell you, I needed to tell him something. I needed to coach him on something. And I said, I need to, and I talked to his parents about it, and they were willing to let me talk to him. And I said, now that you're getting older, I want to encourage you. And so I need for you to know that I'm an experienced teacher and a life coach. and I'm fearless because I've been through having children, raising children before, and having them in the home. So make myself an appointment to talk to him. Make myself an appointment to go in my little sewing room and pick out something to finish. And make myself an appointment to go clean out a bookshelf. Make myself an appointment to go through a box of stuff. And these appointments, I don't know, I find myself happier from having done it, even though no one's going to notice. And they say, I've heard this before, that your character is not just who you are when people know what you're doing, but who you are and the way you act when no one is watching. And so we need to have character qualities that where we can improve ourselves in many ways. And we also need to have a way of not being discouraged and not growing weary in well-doing. I'll try to remember to put that on and print that down for you. And it's do not grow weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. And it just means if we don't give up. So, ladies, I hope this has been helpful to you, that you got a good Jane Austen walk in it, and that you breathed in the air, and that your little life just for 2 minutes is great just because you took a break from worrying and from fear, and that you know that the home is the greatest place you can be. It's even greater than anything royalty could ever have. I was thinking the other day how much the home surpasses all social structures. All, it's greater than anything royalty could ever have, and yet it's very simple. And you are your own boss, and you conduct it how you like it. And even royalty can't do that. They don't have much control over their own lives. They're controlled by all their appointments and other things that they have obligations to do, and they don't really have the kind of life that we have, but we can have a beautiful life. Next time I come, I hope to read one of the sermons of Peter Marshall that I found quite fascinating. And he was the one that wrote The Keeper of the Springs, and I had read that to you before, but I hope to read some of his other things too, which were very good. So, ladies, God bless you. Thank you for all you do for me. And if you'd like to contribute, you can go to my PayPal over there on the left side of the blog where I am posting this. And thank you all for your encouragements and for your prayers and for your comments. I love you. Goodbye.